So, customizing jeans part 2. The skullbutt? Is this what you'd call a skullbutt? A skeletal behind, if you will? Rest assured, I am just as awkward as I look in that fit check. So, how did we get to that point? Well, we had just finished the flanks and the legs, and it was time to add fun to the back. In other words, challenge myself by doing a skull based on Van Gogh's skull. I looked up the ref, on Pinterest. You have it right there as you see it. Readied myself and got to it. I sketched using yellow pencil for fabric, which really didn't work that well. So I used some white soft pastel chalk for all the sketching and tried to use the yellow, although it didn't really work well at all, to really highlight the parts that I wanted to be noticeable in the sketch. And then I started, blocking in the general shapes with the paint. I was nervous, but I did it. It was a lot of work, I admit. It was work. I had to peel off all the old paint from everything I did in the last one. All the fire and the flames where everything went down to shit. You watched it, and if you haven't, go watch it. The flames turned out, they're not bad, but they're not my best work. But yeah. Okay, so for color mixing, I'm using exactly the same paints. The fabric paints are really cheap ones, nothing fancy. And I'm mixing all the light greens and yellows that Van Gogh used in his painting. And I'm just color matching by sight from the reference. We started blocking in the shapes then, using green and black, outlining the position of my forms and shapes. I had, on one side of the screen of my tablet, I had the reference of the original skull from Van Gogh, and I had a 3D model of a skull, like a real human skull, on the other side. Why? Because I didn't want what I was doing to look exactly the same as Van Gogh's skull. Mine was more of a study inspired by Van Gogh's skull, but I wanted it to look as anatomically correct as it could look. Van Gogh's original skull is not exactly a lesson in anatomy accuracy, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I wanted mine to be more accurate than that. So I had on one side of the screen the Van Gogh skull for reference on how he was doing his lightning and where he was placing his colors and everything. And on the other side, I had the reference for a 3D, real human skull that I kept looking at, trying to see where the vertebrae were, how the cheekbones were positioned, and everything like that. You can see that the initial layers are just a lot of blocking in the general feeling and position. I focused a lot on the skull at first, and that's honestly usually how I do everything with all my pieces, whether they're traditional or digital. Whenever I start painting or drawing something, I always start from the highest part. So, the skull, the head, the eyes, that kind of stuff. It's always what I start with, because I find that personally, it's way easier to proportion everything correctly when you start from the highest part of the composition, especially when it comes to anatomy. I don't understand how there are some people that start drawing from the legs what? From the legs or from the hips or from the shoulders or like literally anywhere else but the head. Like, what? Unless they're not concerned with keeping, accurate anatomy. We're not concerned with not only the accuracy of the anatomy, but things like they're working with very crazy, like fisheye perspective that does not really have accuracy to it. Then usually, like just generally speaking here, as what I've noticed, but generally I've noticed that people that start not from the head, but like from the legs, the hips, or anywhere else that is not the head, end up with skewed proportions in their body drawing. I don't know why. Maybe it's just a matter of in the order that we pay attention to the composition. I don't know why, but generally that's what I've noticed. That people who start drawing not from the head, but from other lower parts end up having a little bit of skewed anatomy. Their legs tend to be either probably really long and their head looks really small compared to the shoulders and hips. Like it tends to look, I don't really know how to put it, but usually as I've seen it, it tends to look a little bit strange. So you can see that I started detailing the skull before I tried to continue blocking in the rest of the shapes of the rib cage, which is a lot of work, I know I had both references, like the Van Gogh skull on the right, and on the left I had like the 3D model for like the whole torso and the skull. So I was constantly looking at it and trying to see how and where things were located, but it was confusing because there are a lot of bones in their rib cage. Honestly, when it comes to drawing skeletons, I do think that drawing or painting, the skeleton, at least the rib cage is the hardest part, in my opinion. The legs and arms are very simple bones. Well, except the feet. The feet have so many bones. Why do they have that many? But aside from the feet, I consider that arms and legs are, when it comes to the skeleton itself, it's not that hard to draw or paint. But the rib cage, oh my god, the rib cage, it has so much going on. It has vertebrae, it has like the ribs, the floating ribs, the sternum. It's just so much detail. And there's the scapula connected to the back, and the shoulder blades. Everything there is just a lot. So I had to do a lot of observation work when I started working on the ribcage. Also, small note, but as you can see, I once again stuck a piece of cardboard just the right size for the back pocket between like the back pocket. Well, I stuck it inside the back pocket. Why? Because as I mentioned in the last video, when it comes to fabric painting on clothes, like specifically on clothes, you should be sticking a piece of cardboard or something similar in between the layers, because if you don't, the paint will most likely bleed through the top layer you're painting on onto whatever's on the bottom, and it will stain and possibly even get stuck all crusty, and it will glue the top to the bottom. And it was at this point when I started to feel a little bit more confident, and I was like, oh shit, you know what, I think this is actually looking quite good. I started the painting pretty scared, because it has been a while since I painted. Like, a long moment. It's been a while. And I haven't done something this complicated with paint, perhaps ever, I don't know. I truly do not have that much experience when it comes to painting with acrylics. Like, for real, man, not that much experience. I've done like a couple of homeworks in all my years in art school. I've done like maybe 6 or 8 homeworks with acrylics. Nothing this complex though. So I started pretty nervous because I was also really out of practice. As I've been saying in my past videos, I've been really blocked the last 2 years, and I didn't paint or draw a lot during that time. So I was afraid of doing this, but it was looking really good. Like all my observation and work was paying off, and I was starting to feel good about it. does not look like Van Gogh's because it was never meant to look like Van Gogh's, nor did I want it to look like Van Gogh. I was just using Van Gogh's as a guide for where to place my colors and my shadow and light. Yeah, actually I can say that this was a project that really, I guess I would say that it revived a little bit of my confidence in my art and in my skills. It's not like it brought me back to like full confidence, like, yeah, I can do anything, and even when it's ugly, it's fine. Because obviously it didn't, you know, I'm still working on that part. Because fact is, some days things will look really good, and some days things will look really bad. It's just fact. Art is not linear. When it comes to progress, it's not linear, it's not a straight line. It changes, and there are ups and downs in our growth and in the way our skills level up. So, you know, there are good days and bad days. When I was starting this painting, I was afraid that this would be a bad day and I would absolutely fucking ruin the project. But yeah, the longer I worked on it, the more I was feeling like, you know, maybe this isn't that bad. This is actually starting to look good. And as long as I continue and do not give up, I can make it look good. Because, you know, that's truly the problem of it. The whole thing, isn't it? That when it comes to art, the part that you really have to struggle through and push through is that you have to get through the ugly stage. When everything looks terrible, you have to keep going until it looks good. Because really, it makes no sense really that we have such high pressures and expectations on ourselves, because no piece will look good at the start. Like, no piece looks good when it's not finished. It makes no sense to expect it to look good before it's finished. It makes no sense. So really, you have to push through the ugly stage. All those unfinished projects we may or may not have in closed drawers, in closed files and folders, you gotta take them out of there and take a look at them, because really, it's not that they're ugly. It's not that they're, you know, bad or whatever. It's just that they're incomplete. It's like they say, you know, like in the art series and in the art books, and like they say in Blue Period, you know, the series, the anime about art students and art school and that stuff. They say basically that an art piece is not finished until you give up on it. And I think that's a piece of wisdom right there. The moment you give up on it, it's when it's done. And as long as you don't give up on it, you can continue to make it better, to make progress on it, to change things. Just don't give up. The moment you give up, it's over for the piece, at least in that moment in time. So, I'm sure you've noticed already that I have a bit of a bad habit, that I tend to do a lot of the smudging and just detailing my piece with my fingers. Why do I do this? I have no idea. I'm a very tactile person when it comes to, well, everything in general, really. Even with my art, whether, you know, I work with clay, I work with, well, different things. I do jewelry, I do clay, I paint and draw. And for some reason, in every fucking medium, I keep sticking my fingers into everything. Why do I do this? I don't know. It's just kind of, I don't know. It feels natural to me to touch up the painting and take away any extra liquid or paint with a fingertip, or smudge a little the paint and try to blend it in with my fingertip. It's just natural to me. It's weird, like, I admit it, because it means that there are painting stains on every single finger, and most likely my face and arms too. I don't know, like, for example, this week I had a drawing class and we were working on a self-portrait, and my face being just completely smudged with charcoal. I looked like I had been in a chimney, like from Mary Poppins. I had charcoal on my cheeks, on my nose, on my chin, on my lips. Like, I had charcoal everywhere. Like, I don't know why, but for some reason I'm very tactile when it comes to my art, which means I get my materials on my face, on my lips, on my hands, on my arms, legs, everywhere. But it works well for me. And yeah, I was starting at this point, I felt really happy with what I was doing. Was it perfect? No. The ribcage could use a lot of work, honestly. But as I said before, rib cages are, in my opinion, like the most complicated part of the skeleton. So I was trying to not feel too bad about it and like, no, man, like it looks good. So I left it like that and I decided, okay, it's time to put the brush aside and give up on it, you know? Like this is what I can do for now. And if I do more, I'll probably ruin it. You gotta know when to stop. So I stopped. Now the next step in the project is to iron everything. Once the paint is dry and, you know, to kind of help to set it, just like with fabric dyes and other things, you gotta set it with heat. So that means ironing the fabric. So I did a lot of ironing over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. There really was a lot of ironing in the process. I made sure to iron backwards, forwards, inwards, outwards, in every possible direction with a lot of pressure, trying to cover up, you know, my paint with some fabric just in case it would behave strangely with the heat. And here's a close-up of the skull as I was working on it, ironing. Did it look good? I hope it looks good. You know, it looks good to me, but yeah. And now we've got to the fit check part. As you can see, I added some embroidery. My intention was... oh my god, that fit check is so awkward. Hey, to be fair, I did it on the back pocket. How did you expect me to do the fit check so that you could properly see the skull and how it looks when I'm wearing the jeans? Don't be weird about it, man. Don't be weird. Oh yeah, I tried to add some bone embroidery. Does it look good? I mean, it's not exactly finished, but I like it. It really customized the jeans to a little bit of a upper level. And then I did a quick fit check outside. My first time wearing it outside. It was during one of the special weeks in university, and I went out to hang out there, and I did a quick fit check outside, and yeah. So I wore the pants. They work. I can confirm they work, and I have already worn them like 4-5 times, and the paint has not worn off so far. So I'd say this project was a success. I'd say it was a success, and yeah, we're done for this week. I'm so glad to be back. You'll be seeing more of me more often. Am I working on a lot of things for college? Yes, but I'm excited about everything, and I'm really looking forward to this last part of the year. So I'll be seeing you next week. Bye! And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you like my stuff. Bye!